We are now live with our second episode of Territories Talk. And I want to greet the people across the Caribbean, especially the overseas territories, starting from the West Cayman Islands, working our way east would be Virgin Islands, Turks and Caicos, Montserrat, Anguilla. And we are now broadcasting also to the Dutch territories. And we have a Dutchman in here today, Joe. Um, And my name is Chris Famous, and I want to greet the people of Bermuda who are watching us through Channel 82. Thank you to Lemon Woods for being a part of this production. We want to thank CBN in the Virgin Islands that hosts us on the radio, and all of those that are watching us on Facebook. So tonight, I won't be doing much talking until the end. Tonight, we have a very special guest in the shape of Mr. Blackman, and he'll be discussing decolonization. And let me introduce one of our co-hosts who couldn't make it last time because of tropical storm Grace, all the way from West Bay Republic, Mr. Eden Hurlston. He'll be talking about responsible real estate development. And last but definitely not least, my cousin and co-host and the innovator behind a lot of this is Miss Shaina Smith Archer of Tortola. Sorry, let me be straight. West End Tortola.
Actually, Frenchman ski if you're gonna get specific.
Okay. You want to put the word name in there as well in case someone wants $10 million?
Just so they know, Frenchman ski.
Frenchman's Key in Tortola. Yeah. The Republic of Frenchman's Key.
Yes, sir.
So tonight we're going to start our discussion with our brother from Cayman Islands, Mr. Eden Hurlston, who will be speaking about responsible real estate development and what happens when it's not. And I turn the floor over to you, Eden.
Thank you so much, Chris. It is a real pleasure to be here and just to be a part of this amazing effort to bring some Caribbean unity and share some knowledge and inspire one another. This is an awesome effort, and I'm so happy to be a part of this. And like you said, I couldn't make it last time because of Grace, tropical storm, hurricane. It looked like a hurricane to me, but it was what it was. I actually tried to chime in and give you all some on-the-spot coverage from when I was assessing damage, but I just couldn't get an online connection that would keep me on. So great to be here this time, and I'm like I said, I'm just so happy to be a part of this. Hello to everybody in the Caribbean, everybody in Cayman, and I just wanted to share a couple things with you about what's going on in development here in Cayman and how I feel like it connects to what's going on in the Caribbean in general, and maybe a couple of things that we can do about it, right? Because we each have our own individual issues and individual makeup and uniqueness to it, but very much so we are sharing one region, and not only that, but a destiny as a people, as well as a common history in many ways. Though we come from stand on different legs, we're all sharing the same land, that's for sure. So should I go ahead and share the screen now, and we can go right into that? All right, so I'm gonna put a share here, and bring us off of that. All right, so this is I call this this is like the epitome of what Cayman is going through right now. We're on the precipice of this beautiful view, and we just cannot figure out how to use this resource and this paradise all around us effectively. So we keep doing the same mistakes over and over. This thing was built terribly in a place it never should have been built. And you might be able to tell in this photo how slanted this thing is. When you get up next to it, it's comical, like a fun house. And this is basically falling into the sea. A poorly constructed seawall, a place where construction should never have happened in the first place. And Today, that went to our planning authority to try to reconstruct this thing, to tear it down and build a new one. And it's I haven't gotten an update on it yet, but I want to bring your attention to one part of the planning application that was put in today. This is our Department of Environment speaking about meeting with the proprietors of the land, the owners of the land. And they're talking about the structural integrity of the structure, so on and so forth, why it was built too close to the sea, the impacts it has on marine life, etc. Plus, it's in a marine park. Let's not forget that. And then it says here, however, the wall has not been designed by a coastal engineer. Therefore, it cannot be established that the proposed design will result in any beneficial changes. So I find it strange that we think of doing this in the first place when we know that coastal erosion is a very real thing in the Caribbean and in small islands and in our island. And then on top of that, it is not required to be designed by an actual coastal engineer. So it really gives this kind of double layer of what are we doing and why are we doing it and for whom are we developing Dr. Roy Boden's famous quote. Now here we have a headline from the news service from just Monday. And they're talking about this is a glimmer of hope now because the DOE has said that there's no way that they're going to allow this project to go on. They're saying the Beach Cabana project is futile. And that has happened because our Conservation Council and the DOE have gotten together to decide that the DOE should be able to wield greater policy power when it comes to advising planning. And so it looks like this is going to be struck down, which is very thankful, and then something different there to buttress that area will be done. Now this is Regal Beach on 7 Mile Beach, which we've been seeing famously lately. And the headline for this is New 7 Mile Beach Wall Already in Ocean. So this seawall over here, they were trying to rebuild to basically build a new seawall around this condominium here, and it's all already degraded from the storm. So the work that they've already put in, and I understand that it actually wasn't structural engineers or a construction crew building this, but the gardeners. And again, that's just that double layer of what are we doing and why are we doing it this way at all? Why do we even think about this? It shows a lot of short-sightedness. It shows a lot of cutting corners. And this was even after they saw the coastal erosion taking place and the seawalls were identified as being a major cause of it. This project went ahead and they started constructing this again. Inclement weather came in, and boom, it's already in the sea. So what do we think the future will hold for that? I'm, not really. It's obvious to me, really and truly. This is the Barker's Beach Resort that's being proposed up by where I live. And this is from their actual promotional video. This area looks nothing like this. It's all very woodsy and very full of trees, a very quiet neighborhood. The people who live up here love living close to the Barker's wilderness. And something being built like this could change the character of our area, just impact it incredibly. It takes on a whole new tenor, and the whole thing is that the precedent it sets is for marching development up our Barker's Beach coastline and turning this possibly into another 7 Mile Beach, because through some very, very suspect zoning changes, our area now of Barker's Wilderness, which is where our Barker's National Park, which is never been really treated as a national park, exists, and yet the coastal areas of that are zoned for resort development, and some of it is zoned for 7 and 10 story resort development, which is like 7 Mile Beach. I can't tell you what this is doing, this is making people in the community think, the stress this is causing, and hopefully galvanization that it will cause. This is the Finn development in South Sound. And you can see where the setbacks have been aligned for the different developments down in this area. And Finn got a special exemption to build out this far, pouring cement directly into the iron shore and bringing their building way beyond the setback line and onto the iron shore. Now already they're seeing saltwater construction materials being left along the reef here. You're seeing impacts being done when the storms come in of washing right up in here. It's a very flawed development. It was approved under very suspect circumstances, and again, it's just epitomizes the development situation that's going on in Cayman. And I'm sure that other places where there's a strong private development force in the Caribbean and around the world are seeing similar things. We all hear of these stories happening all over the place. This is Finn viewed from by town, a whole different thing where they're lighting it up with neon lights. And this was when it was partially up. Now it's fully lit up. This whole thing is lit up. And you can see this is from a Facebook post. Finn, the strip club, is open in South Sound. I mean, this is not what Cayman is supposed to look like, really. You know, this isn't what we all envision. We have thoughts of being within a character and maintaining an island character and maintaining our cultural aesthetic. Those things are all talked about in a development plan that is supposed to be implemented under this administration called Plan Cayman, but it has yet to really be tabled as to how that is going to go into effect.
So I have a quick question, Eden.
Yes, certainly.
Because I'm trying to figure out if you guys have heard about climate change in the Cayman Islands.
Yes, trust me.
And the
I don't
fact
know.
that sea levels are expected to rise in a few years, maybe even sooner, because storm surge, especially from storms, is a reality that we're already facing.
We're seeing it.
Why would that be allowed?
It's simple. Short-term profit motive. That's why it's being allowed. We are, especially now with tourism being down because of COVID, we're very dependent on this development dollar and the fees that it brings into government being a tax-free jurisdiction. And we are unfortunately dealing with such things. You know, this is Astor won't make full payback for mangrove loss. So Astor is a medical development that we're not even sure if we actually need it. We don't know if we need another medical development this size. No assessment has been done. No assessment for accommodations or for residential builds has been done. So we don't know if we need 500 new bedrooms or 500 new homes or 1,000 new bedrooms or how many 10-story buildings. We just keep rolling them out on the development train. We know that mangroves are critical to climate change. That mystical word that you mentioned that seems like such a foreign concept that we're experiencing right now. And they mowed down acres and acres of mangroves, 22 acres of mangroves. Wow. And it's just no big deal. We have after the fact clearances they'll clear mangroves and then ask for permission after the fact. One of the most key ecosystems for helping us to deal with climate change, storm surge, sea level rise, these mangrove ecosystems are critical. Especially, remember, Cayman has our land is on very high land, and we're like 10 feet up, right? Yeah. So it's we are very low lying, and these inland lying mangrove areas are critical for us to be able to sop up water, deal with the water,
with the flooding,
and deal with the flooding. So this is endangering people's properties and people's homes. And the question really is becoming to those of us who are raising these concerns and trying to come up with solutions is, when does this go from being some fringe tree hugger environmental issue to being a national security issue? When do we start to think of the zoonotic diseases that can be bred by leaving standing water without any trees to tend it, and the birds that live in those trees to eat the bugs? Do we need to have a new strain of Zika arrive first, or like, what is it going to take to wake us up? And now maybe with what we're seeing with storm surge and what we're seeing going on, and with the new government we have in, this is a chance for some of these opportunities to come to the fore. This is a publicly available document here that speaks exactly to this, one done by a Caymanian scientist and a rascal extraordinaire, Miss Linda Clark. And this was submitted to Parliament as part of written evidence of a much larger report. And she outlines what has been promised by the new government and all of the different things that are going on. This is a graphic right here that was done from a study in 2018 by Katrina Jern and some fellow researchers, talking about the mangrove loss that has happened in Cayman. This was up to 2013. And so we see that 69% of the mangroves have been lost since 1976. The data, I'm sure, is much more dire at this point, but we don't have an official count yet. So we could be looking at 80%. And she outlines a number of problems here. Exponential growth. We just have an infinite growth development model. We cater to mass tourism instead of having a quality over quantity approach to our tourism product, and we're suffering through that for 40 plus years now. Unstable population growth. Private sector is driving development, which is what I just showed you just now. We have example after example of ridiculous developments, to the point where we're developing in such a way that it makes our knowledge base look like it's existing in the early 70s or mid 70s. We're developing for 1980 Miami when now we have 2021 knowledge apparent to us. Auditor General reports have been filed talking about the need for proper development strategies. We've given way too much after the fact planning approvals. We've been given way too much leeway in planning's ability to grant exemptions. And this is the Central Mangrove Wetland, which is the largest, largest mangrove wetland in the Caribbean. And this is how much of it right here we actually have preserved.
Wow. Could you zoom in on that so we can see?
I can. So we have an environmental buffer zone here, right? Now that is supposed to be preserved as part of a resilience strategy, and then this is land that has been bought by the National Trust. All other land here. This is Crown land, but Crown land has flexible nature to it. It can be released, it can be rezoned, and that's something else that has been going on over the last 40 years way too often. It's what puts Barker's National Park in such a precarious zone, is that we don't really have full comprehensive protection for it, even though it's called a national park. So it could be sold, it could be released, it could be at any given time. And then we have a small animal sanctuary here. So what that accounts for, as you can see at the bottom, is 75% of this is private land.
Okay, so they can do whatever they want to with it based on development or the zoning, I should say.
Right. And meanwhile, mangroves are a protected species. So the question becomes, when is it illegal to cut down one mangrove? Right now we can clear 22 acres of it, 50 acres of it, 100 acres of it, and then ask for permission after the fact, even though we know it's a critical ecosystem. We can build on the coasts and get exemptions to build closer to the coast than we're supposed to, even though we know sea level rise is a real thing and is happening, even though we know that the coastal ecosystems are critical to our national security. And yet we keep doing it, and the prices keep going up, driving out Caymanians from being able to participate in the property market to be as well. So then we have an endangerment of our future generations' ability to participate in and actually be able to buy safe property for themselves. So I'm going to be republishing this on my Facebook page and putting this a link to this up again, and a link to the full report. Because for everyone in Cayman, the information that Linda has put together here is absolutely critical. It cannot be ignored. And we don't have time. We don't have time to mince words. We don't have time to pretend that there's some other solution other than sane development. And again, it's not a matter of no development. It's a matter of sane, humane development. So this ties in, of course, to things that are happening around the Caribbean, even though my experience with other jurisdictions in the Caribbean is showing that more solutions are coming forward, more attention is being paid to climate change, and governments are responding to some extent or another. Caribbean Tree Planting Week that happened earlier this summer, I was really, really amazed taking part in that. It was just an incredible project, and I can't wait till 2022 Caribbean Tree Planting Week. This is the first one ever, and Cayman had signed up for it, and yet we didn't have any official tree planting project during the week of it. I did one in my yard with one of the West Bay MPs here, Catherine Ebanks Wilkes, who is one of our real champions here in West Bay, and we planted out a coconut tree and some native understory for it. But that lack of participation in that shows Cayman's how late we are coming to this party. Meanwhile, I'm talking to people in other jurisdictions that have created employment, created real solutions, and are innovating ideas by doing tree planting, by planting breadfruit, creating cottage industries that are making breadfruit flour, empowering women, empowering the people of Cayman, empowering youth, getting youth to grow their own food, implementing ideas around food sovereignty. And that is the kind of conversations that we need to be having 20 years ago. And so that brings us to hopefully some solutions. Because right now, what it is we're at a stage where we are colonizing one another, so to speak. We are keep one-upping one another. We keep distancing from one another, finding any reason to become divided in Cayman. And now we see some solutions come forward, like this that has been championed by Sustainable Cayman, which is the South Sound Mangrove Park and Tarpon Alley Trail. Concerned citizens who make up Sustainable Cayman have presented this already to the Premier, and it has been received with great enthusiasm. So we're really looking to see some change from this new PACT government we have in here. This is a proposal that has been put forward for a development that integrates climate resilience and climate action, as well as creating healthy, infinitely habitable places for residents of Cayman. Very people-friendly places. So you can see that they talk about the risks here, the status of the wetlands, and you see that same graphic that's from Katrina and her team's research in 2018. Okay. They point to the infrastructure concerns that we just throw down roads haphazardly to try to solve our transport woes. And this is an aerial view of the area where you see there's so much area in here that can, if we use it in a constructive, sustainable way, it could really make for a beautiful new way forward to have sustainable development going on in Cayman.
So then my question to you then, because
yes,
I know similar to what you guys are dealing with, we have the same challenges here in the Virgin Islands in terms of developing in a more environmentally friendly way, right?
Yes.
Because we have the same basically types of ecosystem. We're marine, we have the wetlands, you have the water. Well, in our case, we have watersheds because we have, the high mountains and stuff.
Right.
But some years back, we started working on what we call the National Physical Development Plan. Is that something that you guys have or are looking at?
Well, like I said, we have a Plan Cayman. There is a full-on website for it. It's a beautiful, glossy presentation of things. There's issues with it for sure, but we do have a development plan. It just hasn't been adopted by any government. So we're still operating by a development plan.
Who developed it? Was it a community initiative or was it the government that did it?
No, Plan Cayman was actually developed by a government committee. Yeah.
Oh,
And but yet they spent all this money on it and have not implemented it. So the private sector has gotten a bit ahead of it because there are developments that are trying to kind of develop along the lines of what Plan Cayman sets out. A major problem with it is that it's not comprehensive. It goes area by area. So they say 7 Mile Beach first, then Georgetown, then West Bay, then this area, then that. And so by the time you get to the last area on the list, it's 50 years and we're already underwater, right?
yeah.
It's lacking a comprehensive nature to it. And so this is now what a lot of concerned citizens are putting forward is that we, in our neighborhoods and communities, do the research, talk to the experts, bring in the requisite knowledge that it exists greatly here on island. We have a lot of great knowledge here that just remains untapped and sitting at the doorstep of serious consideration. And again, it's simply because they're talking about ideas that are a little more beneficial to the whole instead of just looking at the profit motive. So in the Tarpon Alley proposal, they look at developments that are being proposed in the area now, right? So they go through several different developments that are listed here in all the different blocks and parcels. Anticipated mangrove habitat loss for proposed developments listed 158.36 acres. So it's, again, speaking to Dr. Roy Boden's famous quote, for whom are we developing? We're the visitors who are going all over the world right now want to stay in these kind of tucked away bungalows and these more sustainable islandy type of things, and even pay premium prices for what seems like a very simple accommodation because it's so Caribbean and so natural, or so tropical and so natural, and yet we are building according to a 1980s Miami skyline type of development perspective.
Yeah.
And so we're not developing for the modern traveler. Then the residents can't buy into it. So we're not developing for Caymanians, and we're not developing for future generations because the development prices are sky high. And we're certainly not developing with nature in mind. So what are we doing, right? And how quickly do we need to incorporate a development plan, and how quickly do we need to get these type of neighborhood plans that have sustainability at the forefront of them in place 10 years ago, 20 years
Yeah.
ago? We're late to this party, and there's no time to mince words anymore. We have to get on with solutions. So
Yeah.
this shows the project goals here of trying to link the roadways, to link pedestrian ways to our other ways of access, not having this just lay down a road here, lay down a road there mentality, but really trying to nestle it into nature, as opposed to building through the wetlands, again cutting off the ability to control flooding, again cutting off the ability for animals to move through the habitat and wildlife to move through the habitat, again cutting down the habitat for all the birds. The birds and the bats eat the mosquitoes. And we just create this cycle ad nauseum until we implement solutions like this. Mangrove retention policies, complying with international standards and obligations that have been put on to that England has signed up to, the Caribbean has signed up to, and then we can see the benefits, right? Which in reality we see through better health and through family. Being involved in their community, feeling a part of their community. We maintain our biodiversity, a huge part of climate action. Having education, fighting climate change with carbon sequestration through trees, et cetera, et cetera. The benefits go on and on and on. We have these kind of experts and these kind of solutions coming forward, and we need to pay close attention to them, especially to come out of this, not come out of COVID-19, because this is going to be an ongoing thing, but really to reshape ourselves into a resourceful and resilient island and a resourceful and resilient region.
Eden,
Yes, sir.
I have a quick question.
Hmm.
Before we has with the new PAC government, have you
Yes, sir.
genuinely seen a change of mindset in the Department of Planning or whatever you may call it, approach to giving out work, giving out building permits?
We have seen definitely greater environmental consideration, and definitely planning. The new planning board has made some decisions, including the look that they're giving to boggy sands, that they have stopped another mangrove clearing happening that was assumed that it was going to happen from the last planning board. So we are seeing real changes. Also, in the latest Gazette, like I said, the NCC and DOE have streamlined the ability for the DOE to take to have a greater legislative power when it comes to their input. So it's not just input that can be tossed aside by planning anymore. It has to be seriously considered and in place where it is actually a part of the conservation law and protecting conservation law. It has to be implemented and listened to. So things like that are forming the legislative foundation to make serious changes within how we develop, for sure. And that shows real promise. It shows real that they're coming through on that, and it shows some hope. I've seen things from the PAC government, including coming out with a code of conduct for the MPs, which is something that has been long standing and supposed to have come out, and many thought it would take at least a year to come out, and they came out with it before their 100 days in office. And that to me was very impressive, because when you look back at 2017 and the UDPPM government coming in, their first 100 days in office, was basically spent trying to shove the port down our throats. Let's not mince any words about it. That was a huge part of what was a part of the last administration, shutting out their people and really trying to make that thing happen, and building a cruise port here, which the people didn't want. And it was very dangerous to not only our environment, but the economy as well, and our stake in our country.
Let me let me let me say this as someone who's been to Cayman once, but I followed the news there. I went to Cayman Islands 3 years ago, and everywhere I looked, there was a crane up. I don't mean a bird crane, a crane.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm like, whoa, this all these almost skyscrapers going up. And when you take a deeper dive into it, you do the statistics of what is the top industry in Cayman Islands. Was the top industry in Cayman Islands? It's construction.
Mm-hmm.
So your economy is almost dependent on continuously building these large structures. It doesn't matter if it's in the middle of the highway or if it's on the wetlands, just build it. And
Right.
and now, especially with COVID economy, where the tourist dollar isn't coming in, governments are strapped for cash all around the Caribbean, and UO's construction industry is just chugging along like hot fire. So it's almost as if the government while they may be environmentally conscious, they're also economically conscious as well. So it's going to be a hard sell for them to just turn down a lot of these projects.
Right. And that brings us to the next segment of this, is how do we pivot from that, right? There's a lot of kind of untruths getting not untruths, let's say half truths, right? The 2019 ESO census that was done here showed that 35% of the construction industry was Caymanians. Now, I've talked to people, Caymanian crew workers, who have told me that maybe it's as much as 1 in 3 sometimes, but a lot of them said, generally speaking, it feels more like 1 in 4, 1 in 5. And I've spoke to some Caymanians who said that sometimes it feels like 1 in 10. Okay, so I mean, that's just talking to. I talked to 39 different people, just doing a casual survey, just asking them, what what their experiences of it. Is this accurate? So we can now, as far as Caymanian jobs go, we can pivot those guys and redeploy those guys into fixing up our clinics, fixing up our schools, going, we implementing, learning solar power, implementing solar throughout the island. There's ways to get that 35% of the working population, to keep them in work, right? But really, who this is profiting, because like you said, we are so dependent on this dollar, and yet we've given away, the estimate is $1 billion in 10 years of concessions, mostly to luxury development. So that, though, it doesn't add up, because who's really profiting from this, again, is the luxury developer. And that is seriously a serious criticism on what's going on. Again, we have this antiquated way of thinking that trickle-down economics is somehow going to work. Meanwhile, we have 10,000 people, almost a third of our Caymanian population is on NAU, which is the national assistance, right? We have a national minimum wage that gets you about $1,200 a month, when you can qualify to be on NAU making less than $3,000 a month. So these are serious things we have to consider, is how are we structuring this? And this brings us into, how do we pivot? How do we make a new economy that's not mass tourism, that's not based on development and 10-story high rises, because those are the cranes you're talking about. And so I wanted to share a very hopeful video right here, to change the tenor.
We'll do that. You wanna do that now, or you wanna do that when your part two presentation?
I just have 2 minutes left in this, and then I'm handing it on. Right. So this is tying it into the solutions here, and what we can do in the Caribbean. And so I don't need to show this entire video, but basically, Cayman Ecodiverse has coral nurseries that have just recently spawned. And even during the 2 storms, they were able to go out there. And so this is coral spawning happening from coral that our local experts have saved and set up in their nurseries. And now we're watching the spawning of it here. So this just happened last week.
How far down is that?
I'm not sure of the depth, but I can ask the eco-divers. They had to go out at night to film it.
Okay.
And so this is an example of knowledge that is available. The fact is, it's like Prime Minister Mia Mottley said in the speech I shared with you all the other day. I can't remember what the official context of it was, but and she talked about how we really have to leverage technology, leverage knowledge. The Caribbean is primed to be a repository of knowledge, almost a living university on how to deal with climate change, especially sea level rise, right? So there's no reason that if we come together and if we each do our individual parts, that we can actually make a knowledge base of how to grow corals, how to replant mangroves, how to replant coastal woodlands and reclaim beaches from coastal erosion, how to slow the effects of sea level rise, how to work together as a community, how to create blue and green jobs to benefit our people. This is an example here about the world's first autonomous 7-megawatt electric cargo ship making its first voyage. Why don't we in the Caribbean come together and own our own shipping? Why don't we have our own crews so that once it comes into this region, we'll take care of the shipping from here. We'll pay our people correctly. We'll pay the people who work on crews correctly. We'll control that market for ourselves once the shipping and once the cruise comes into here. here's an example of a prototype electric cruise ship that's supposed to be going out. So again, these are climate action, sustainably oriented projects that, why don't we take ownership in this? The cruise industry is notorious for its business practices, pollution, all of these different things. Maybe we could put a different spin on that as Caribbean people, and while controlling what is happening in our seas as a resource, on each island be contributing to the library of how to fight um, climate change as a people, and help create a repository of knowledge for um, for the world to benefit from, in other areas of where they're trying to do similar things in restoring their coastal areas and restoring mangroves, in fighting sea level rise, and not only that, but in conglomerating social harmony, where we have such a diversity of people, a diversity of influences, a diversity of histories and diasporas, making our communities resilient and our islands and our region resilient are all things worth investing in. Why? Because they need to be. If we have any thought for future generations, it is absolutely crucial that we start having these conversations, like I said, 20 years ago.
All right, thank you, Eden, for that passionate and informative dem- uh, presentation. Sorry, jet lag kicking in. I think this is obviously going to be an ongoing topic, not necessarily every week, but we all in each of the islands need to take a page out of that latest book. This, if you could share that with us, because each of us may, the topography may differ in different islands, but it's the same basic thing of preserving what limited land space we have left. So thanks again, Eden, and thanks to the people of Cayman Island who did that work to produce that
Yep.
report. And it's really a travesty to see what you've presented.
Yeah.
Not what you presented, but
What's
the
happening?
desecration of the wetlands and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Because where did Chris go?
I don't know, he just hopped off.
Alrighty, so viewers, again, you're watching us on Bermuda's channel 82, also on the Territories Talk Facebook page. But while we're waiting on Chris, what I'll do is I'll start to pivot. If anybody has any questions, feel free to post questions in the comments on Facebook Live, and we can pick them up. One person did leave a comment, I guess supporting what you were saying, Eden, where he said any solid structure of a sandy shoreline is likely to cause increased erosion. Clever engineering might influence the erosion in a desired manner in a local area, but the overall effect will usually be negative. So, building basically on the beach is not a good thing. I mean, it pushes out a lot of brochures, and of course, that's
Right.
always a good thing. But I completely understand where you're coming from, because we've had that battle here, but more so because we don't have zoning laws.
Wow.
So it's something where on an individual basis, when the plans go in, then we're expecting the development authority to do the due diligence on, environmental impact. And I think in some certain cases, it's not required in terms of having the environmental impact assessment done. Because I remember that coming up one time. I went to, I think it was a community meeting about a gas station in a residential area. So we have that challenge from that standpoint, in that we do need more, we need to revise our laws, and put more emphasis again around what is sustainable. Because construction, I get what you're coming from, because from an economic standpoint, the construction is there in terms of a driver, but then when you destroy the landscape, then what do you build? you know we have to go back and try to rework it. But once things like coral are destroyed, those things take years to come back. All right,
And,
so
and
in interest
for
of
future
time,
generations.
yeah, so we have to leave it better for them, and I think that's the key thing from coming out of all the work you guys are there and came on doing, to make sure that you're leaving a legacy that persons can enjoy for a few more generations, if nobody else minds. All right, so I will introduce our next guest. I think I saw Chris come back. There he is. Hey, Chris, you're back.
Yeah, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're hearing you now.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So we're just wrapping up Eden's topic, and I shared a little bit in terms of our challenges from a standpoint of development because we don't have zoning laws like they have there, and that's one of the things we like to see um, more of happening. So I guess I will go ahead and introduce our guests and move to our next topic, Chris.
Yes, so our next guest, as the unfortunate reality is that we are all overseas territories, whether they are British overseas, French overseas, or Dutch overseas territories, and we also have one American overseas territory. And territory, as we know, is basically a nice name for colony. So one of the mandates of this show is to educate our people on the processes of self governance, or some other words, decolonization. So, because I'm not an expert in that subject matter, we have experts in the field from our region. We don't need to bring anybody in from Europe to tell us about decolonization because they taught us pretty well about colonization. So, without further ado, I introduce you now to Mr. Blackman, who's actually a cousin to someone who's married to my cousin.
It's a
So,
small world.
yes,
Yes, good
thank
evening,
you, Mr.
everybody, and
Blackman.
thank you for the introduction. I'm
Mhm,
not sure about the expert part, but I have been through, let's call it the school of hard knocks when it
mhm.
comes to decolonization since returning from Europe to my island of birth, well known to you, Xavier. So let me just go quickly to or start where we are now in terms of the Dutch territories. The first important thing to know is that the decolonization, the complete decolonization in accordance with the UN Charter and the different relevant resolutions, was never completed for the Dutch Caribbean islands. So you had the Netherlands Antilles. Initially, you had the Netherlands Antilles and Suriname. Uh, they were not completely decolonized until Suriname left the Kingdom of the Netherlands in 1975 and became completely independent. So then you had the Netherlands Antilles remaining with six islands. And those six islands really had, when I say, I wouldn't say little in common, because obviously there were a lot of family and other relationships between the islands. But in terms of, let's say, they were basically like independent little states. By definition, an island is, surrounded by water, and it creates a certain island feel, a certain independent feeling. So the complicating factor there was that the biggest, by far largest island, Curacao, was kind of seen as, the mini colonizer among the islands, right? So the federal government had its seat in Curacao. The funding from the Netherlands went first to the central government in Curacao, and then it would trickle down to the islands to a certain extent. So that constellation really was not working. Um, but to go back to when the decolonization should have started and should have been finalized. So in 1945, the UN basically mandated that colonialism in all its forms should be abolished and all countries should become independent. That was the initial point of departure, and then later on, as time went on, countries realized that pure, strict independence was not necessarily or should not always be the end point for a nation, for a people. They could choose for other forms, free association, and sometimes even integration. But what happened actually in 1954 is that the Netherlands, so the European part of country, kind of sold to the world at the UN that with the acceptance of the new Kingdom of the Netherlands, that the decolonization was finalized, right? So they kind of, and of course, let's say the political elite on those islands had an interest to, let's call it, play country and play independent. So they kind of colluded, for lack of a better word, to sell to the world that with this new kingdom order, the decolonized. So the UN passed a resolution, Resolution 943, stated violence, excused of Article 73 of the United Nations, Section E. Article 73 has A through that the
Aiden, are you hearing him?
I think I just dropped out.
It's yep. If the screen froze.
Xavier, are you there? Okay, he's probably
Hey,
refreshing.
you off and on?
Okay, go ahead.
Yep.
You're back.
There you go.
Can you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, let me try to continue back on. 1954 is that Holland did not have the Netherlands about its sub E of the. However, the other obligations have, and which is to develop with due respect the specificities of the territories concerned, help them to build up the institutions. All of those obligations were to prepare the territories for ultimate independence. So, resolution uh, is. However, the interpretation of that, at least by the Netherlands, is that, well, since report that they went a step further. And that brings us to, as at least in Maarten, we have said decolonization was not of the U. Uh, in decade for the of well would be the top priority, because talking about development, talking about environmental challenges, no matter how you look at those issues that the IPIT, it all boils down to them not being able to make the best decisions for their societies and their people without undue external interference from the metropolitan state. So that's where you have that tension, I would say, that has existed for the last 70 years. And recently it has basically come to the phase where, at least within the Dutch Caribbean islands, the discussion is there with the Netherlands. The Netherlands, we have piles of academic research proving that the decolonization was not finalized. So what we are doing now is bringing that awareness, not just to our people, but also to the Netherlands, and trying to convince them that they should finalize that process, and which also would be in their benefit. Because the problem is that from a constitutional standpoint, the islands of the former Netherlands Antilles, or the Dutch Caribbean islands, are kind of in a constitutional purgatory. They are fish no fowl. They are not completely independent, yet they are not integrated. So what you see happening is that when an international issue arises, for instance, with the Venezuelan refugees in Curacao, the Netherlands says, you're an autonomous country. You have to take care of that issue, not just capacity-wise, but also funding-wise. And when it's convenient to the Netherlands, they can impose financial regulations. So, we are saying you can't have your cake and eat it too, obviously. So it's in Holland's interest, the Netherlands' interest, to finalize the decolonization, because then they won't be able to be blamed, because they are saying, yeah, when it goes wrong, we are blamed, but you guys still want our money and resources, right? So you have on both sides of the coin, you have that argument, and we are saying, look, if you finalize the decolonization, the authority, the responsibilities are clearly delineated, so nobody can point fingers. We'll just have to make do with what we have, and paddle our own canoe, based on the obligations that Holland still has, and that brings us to the topic of reparations, because Holland has, because of Article 73 of the UN Charter, has, let's say, a retroactive obligation towards the islands of the Dutch Caribbean, at least in our opinion. So that is in a nutshell what has been going on in the Dutch Caribbean islands. And in terms of Caribbean, the larger Caribbean context, the question is, if the decolonization of the Dutch Caribbean islands was not completed, that would have to lead to the conclusion that it was not completed for the British territories either. And that then leads to the question, should the Dutch, the British, but also the French territories, who fall under the same UN Charter, and whose metropolitan states have the same obligations, should they join forces and approach their metropolitan states jointly, and make sure that the decolonization is finalized. So that is in terms of the wider Caribbean context, what is currently being looked at. From St. Maarten, we have reached out to other territories. We have shared the information about the whole decolonization process in the Dutch territories, and why we feel that it should be applicable to all the territories. So that is in a nutshell, going from 1945, 54 to where we are today. So the dialogue with the Netherlands is ongoing, and we are looking to ramp up that dialogue with our sister islands, at least in the Dutch Caribbean, to bring the decolonization to a successful end.
Yes, I am muted. All right. So, Chris, I'm going to ask him a few questions, and then you can share with us your experience, because we know that you just came back from the C24 committee, the decolonization committee meeting that was held last week. I don't know if you were there as well, Xavier, in terms of representing on your end. No? Okay.
Unfortunately, I was not. No, I was in Bonaire attending another important meeting of the parliaments within the Dutch Kingdom. So that was, I would say, at least equally important.
Okay, so we're going to start first with a comment that just popped up, because your connection was in and out there for a second. So the person was saying it was unfortunate that you were freezing up when you were explaining the history part of the sham decolonization process. I guess kind of like you summarized it at the end, hopefully, in terms of person realizing, because I think I misstated in the last show when we started talking about decolonization that you guys had gone through the process of integration, only to find out when you and I spoke that not so fast, in terms of it being completed and the importance of that. Because one of the questions I would pose to you is, why is it taking so long? Because again, if this is an international mandate, we're having meetings every year to say, this is what we want, then why, whether it's on the administrative power or it's on the local governments, and where is this thing bottlenecking?
Okay. Well, the problem started with the fact that, like I said earlier, that interpretation by the Dutch Kingdom that with the acceptance of the new Kingdom Charter, Article 73E was not applicable. They interpreted that as Article 73 in its totality was not applicable anymore. Mm-hmm. So there you get a misinterpretation, and that has then been, let's say, since 1954, that has kind of been the narrative. So the Netherlands have been able to, let's say, hide the fact that they did not decolonize. And the kingdom structure of the Netherlands is so unique, I would say, not even that complicated, but unique, that most nations don't even understand it. So they don't realize that the structure that we have now is one of an incomplete decolonization. On the end of the islands, like I said before, the political elite had an interest in, for lack of a better word again, playing country and saying, look, we are autonomous, we have our own prime minister, right? So, which from their perspective also is understandable. But so jointly and inadvertently, both parties on both sides of the coin, they have contributed to this notion, this narrative that well,
That
they are
you were,
decolonized,
it was done. Yeah.
right? And everybody's happy with it. So that has kind of been so nothing happened, and of course the Dutch had no interest in raising this issue. The Caribbean islands didn't have that much of an interest either because it was a kind of a comfortable and safe cushion, right? The Dutch had this concept of benevolent colonialism, right? So why should you had the same thing with slavery, but you're getting fed, 3 times a
Yeah,
day.
yeah. It's not
It's
so
not that
bad.
bad,
It's not so bad.
right? Well, how are you going to fend for yourself, right? So that was indeed that narrative has been spread over the years, and nobody really looked into the legal specificity of that 1954 resolution by the UN. So now that all has become clear and academic research has shown what the actual legal status is of these islands, now we can have that discussion.
Okay. So what's the goal? Is the goal integration? And what would that look like?
Not necessarily integration. The goal is so the UN basically says whatever the outcome is of the. Just 1 second, hold on. Yeah, sorry about that. Um, the Whatever the outcome of the decolonization is, according to based on the UN Charter, it should also always lead to a full measure of self-government on the basis of absolute equality with the metropolitan state, right? So theoretically speaking, you could say that even if you integrate with the metropolitan state, you would be independent within that metropolitan state because you have a full measure of self-government, and then you have all kind of criteria that you can use to check off if you have a full measure of self-government without external interference. So you have basically they started with three models of a full measure of self-government. One is independence, full-fledged independence and sovereignty, free association, and full integration. And then they realize that they're all kind of hybrid forms that are possible once both partners are completely
Agree. Yeah.
right happy with it, and the will of the people have to be expressed, whether it's a referendum or the people that you vote in the office make that choice. So it's not a black and white
Okay.
picture, but what at least St. Maarten is looking for is a full measure of self-government, and that does not mean technically let's say, formal independence in terms of a Sint Maarten passport, a country outside of the Dutch kingdom. Because based on the UN requirements, Sint Maarten already has independence within the kingdom on paper. It's just that the Dutch has never treated us that way. We have never demanded that they treat us that way.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. So Chris, how was the trip?
Oh,
Or you had
can
a
I ask?
question, Eden?
Yes,
Sure.
yes, please. Very, very interesting. Thank you very much for sharing that. I am curious as to your perspective, and when we talk about things like food sovereignty, having a greater stake in our ability to control our resource flow here within the region, and the ability of countries to say, I prefer to get my cassava from Jamaica instead of from South America, or if I want to get my goods within the region, or when the ideas that I had talked about us having more control of shipping and crews within our region, for instance, what kind of legs do we have to stand on to make those decisions as a region about how our resources are managed and who gets the lion's share of those spoils? Because we all know where the balance lies right now. There's a whole lot of outside interests that are outside of the region. So where does this leave us in terms of talking about managing our own resources and unifying in any kind of meaningful way to change that paradigm to something that more benefits the Caribbean?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and let me shout out to Mr. Simmons who posed that, who made that remark earlier. That's a little segue to that because Mr. Simmons was a commissioner, government commissioner in St. Eustatius, and while I was there working as an advisor, we actually organized a business orientation visit to Trinidad and Tobago. And in that, and I listened to the previous broadcast, Shaina, when you mentioned indeed about the integration. So I picked that up. I said I'll speak to you about that later. But what I found very interesting, and I told Chris that too, is that you all mentioned that food sovereignty, and you know, especially in times of calamities. So in 2017, a delegation of St. Eustatius went to Trinidad and Tobago, and we met with one of the larger chambers of commerce there, and they had a lot of entrepreneurs that were interested in shipping to St. Eustatius, and the benefits for St. Eustatius was that they could then set up small local industries. So we would, for instance, ship rice or other food products in bulk from Trinidad and Tobago to Statia, process it, repackage it, and then ship it out throughout the region. And obviously vice versa. We would then send.
You're on mute, Xavier.
Sorry. Yes. Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Vice versa, we were looking at Statia exporting goat meat to Trinidad, you know, where they make the curry goat, obviously. So there are a lot of, I hear that in your presentation as well, Eden, and I think that struck a chord one time. I think it should be done. That I think it's without question that we should limit our dependence on, the players outside of the region. For instance, in St. Maarten, one of the reasons why we looked at those options, and St. Maarten is also looking into that option of Trinidad, but also Suriname, is that once a calamity hits in terms of hurricanes, for St. Maarten and the northeastern Caribbean, the entire supply line is basically cut off. So you have Puerto Rico and then you have Miami. So you are completely cut off for a while from food supplies, while you have in the outside of the hurricane zone, you have, Trinidad basically manufactures everything under the sun. I mean, they can really depend on their own manufacturing industry. So that was one of the reasons. And to tie into your question, Eden, one of the impediments for those kind of developments for the Dutch Caribbean islands is that foreign affairs is a kingdom affair. So technically, you would need permission from the metropolitan state to initiate these kind of trade missions or relationships. Period. But it goes further. It goes to maritime agreements, airline agreements. So it really limits us in making choices that benefit our people, because you have to get permission, quote unquote, from the metropolitan state. But definitely those initiatives, personally, I think they should be definitely on the high on the agenda of all the Caribbean states.
And so right now it would be basically up to the communities or the private entities or businesses to say, you know what, I'm going to trade within the Caribbean. I'm going to set myself up and scale myself to be a Caribbean-based business. It would basically be up to the individual organization, or it would be very difficult to approach it on a national level, is what I'm saying. It'd be more of a working of like how we're networking now. And you say, I'm going to trade with you, you're going to trade with me, we're going to trade with Shaina, Shaina's going to trade with Chris, and we would only be able to close the loop that way, but not in a meaningful way on a national official scale. Correct. Without, like you said, permission. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
For the Dutch Caribbean islands, at least, that is an impediment.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
You're on mute, Chris.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Thank you. It's been very informative, because what tends to happen is us who are in the quote unquote English colonies, we don't know much about what's going on in the Dutch islands, and I assume vice versa to some extent. I mean, a lot of people go to St. Maarten. Most people in the Eastern Caribbean have gone to St. Maarten, because it's, it's a transit point, and also, there's a bit of shopping, duty free shopping, or used to be duty free shopping there, but the intricacies of what is going on there, we don't know. So thank you for that. What I would use as an analogy is that Shana and I are biologically related, and Mr. Blackman, your biological cousin is related to is married to my biological cousin. So we're all related. However, um, in the last 2 months, up until about 2 months ago, we didn't know each other. We weren't communicating with each other. So, all of this, what's happening now, is because we have formed a relationship and are working together. The challenge for us is that the European nations have basically been on the same WhatsApp chat group for the last 500 years.
Yeah.
So whether the Dutch, French, Spanish, English, or to some extent the Danish, who got kicked out, the point is they have collaborated amongst themselves as to how to keep us colonized. And when they couldn't colonize us, they found new terms and said, okay, you're so part of the Dutch kingdom, or you are overseas territory and you have British citizenship now. And people fall for that to feel like, oh, they're treating us like equals now. No, no, they're not. They're not. But I won't get too far into that. And as you said, they have locked up, or even apart from the political dependency, they've locked us into economic dependency, that the big importers are buying from those that have ties to European nations. Right? We live, you know, if planes actually flew on time, most islands are half an hour away from each other. You could fly from Dominica to St. Lucia in half an hour. You could fly from Barbados to St. Lucia in half an hour. I could fly from Statia to St. Martin in 20 minutes, right? Cayman Islands is probably the most far out island, and based off of just geographic location. But my point is, how is it we have goods all the way from Europe, who's thousands of miles away from us, but we don't have goods from Guyana, which is, for lack of a better term, just down the road from us. 400 years of being on the same WhatsApp chat group, they worked that out already.
Mm-hmm.
Shana, to your question, I was in Dominica for the United Nations C24 conference. It took me 2 days to get there because lack of flights.
Yeah.
It's half an hour. I was in St. Lucia, stuck in St. Lucia for 2 days because there's no flight to Dominica, which is only half an hour away.
Wow.
Coming out of Dominica, stuck again. My point is that we had United Nations there in the Caribbean hosting a conference about decolonization.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone want to guess how many Caribbean nations actually showed up? Not nations, but Caribbean islands showed up?
5.
Nope.
Less?
Nope. Yeah, well, yes, less. So
Wow.
out of the
3?
Dutch, we had the Dutch islands, right? Which is what, 1, 2, 3, 4, Mr. Blackman?
Well, technically, you could say
5.
6. But
All right, 6. So you have 6 Dutch islands. You have 6 English islands, and you have some degree 3 French islands: Guadeloupe, Martinique, and Saint Martin, the northern side. So there are 9 colonies, European colonies. 10 actually, if you add in USVI. There are
Mm-hmm.
10 European colonies still in the Caribbean. 11 if you add in French Guyana.
Mm-hmm.
Only 2 showed up: the
Wow.
Virgin Islands and Bermuda. So when you have a convention or a meeting about decolonization, and 10 people don't show up, that indicates to the colonizers, well, maybe they aren't interested.
Mm-hmm.
So I won't prolong this subject because we could get into this another time, but the interest has to come from us. Number one, to
Definitely.
connect with each other. Number 2, to tell our own stories to the world. We cannot keep having the French, the Dutch, and the English telling our stories because they're painting a story as if all is well in paradise. So with that, I would say thank you, Mr. Blackman, and that will be my take on it for now. I know this is going to be an ongoing dialogue, so
Yeah.
don't want to
An
totally
excellent
cover it
point.
all in one night.
Yeah.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's
That's
very, very
interesting.
potent.
Yeah. 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 Yep. Yep. All right, Chris, what's next on the agenda? Because you know we could talk all night about things, but
Yeah. So
the night is getting older.
all right. So I will wrap it up with a very brief presentation over something that we have environmental concerns, we have um, colonial concerns, but right now we're dealing also with COVID concerns. So I will just
Hmm.
give a brief presentation of COVID stuff.
Which one you want to
Yes,
start
we
with
can
first?
start there. We can
Okay.
start there. So as we can see by this headline, which was from just about 2 weeks ago, Turks and Caicos Islands will require all visitors 16 and older to be vaccinated starting September the 1st. Today, that means if you're not vaccinated, the Turks and Caicos Islands will not accept you. As much as they may need your dollars, they will not accept you because potential for breakout is there. Next slide, please.
Um, this one.
Guess what? Anguilla said the same thing. Only open to vaccinated travelers as of June the 1st. So Anguilla experienced an outbreak as well. And they said, you know what? We're not going to chance it. We don't want we don't want our resorts shut down. We don't want our people unemployed. So only vaccinated people. Sorry, but that's what it is. So we see a trend going on, not just in the overseas territories, but in the Caribbean on a whole, because Antigua and St. Kitts to some extent are toying with that idea. But these overseas territories have come right out and said, hey, no, you're not vaccinated. Sorry, don't come. Next slide, please. So if you look at that, this is a chart produced today. Um, the The information is from the several different websites, so it's confirmed information, and we just alphabetically go through what's going on in different overseas territories. In Anguilla, for those who don't know, Anguilla is just west of St. Maarten, population of roughly 15,000 persons. So in Anguilla, according to government websites, 60% of persons are immunized, and they only want vaccinated visitors to come. They are not taking anyone who is not unvaccinated. And there's locals that do come there that are unvaccinated. They have to quarantine for a certain amount of days. And I'll come back to Bermuda last. In the Cayman Islands, Eden's country, they have the privilege of saying they have the highest immunization rate in the Western world. West mean everything west of Europe. 75, close to 75% immunized. Right now, they are allowing no visitors until October when they hope to get to 80% immunized. And because of no visitors, they have almost very little spread to none, little to no spread. So they have no curfew. In Montserrat, their vaccination rate is very low. Their population is about 5,000 persons. I didn't get any full information whether they have curfew and so on, but they are at 30% immunization. In Turks and Caicos Island, as we spoke about earlier, they are at 60% immunized. They only want vaccinated visitors. Unvaccinated locals must quarantine for seven days. They just put out another mandate which started today that only vaccinated locals will be allowed. The only persons allowed in the bars, whether they be locals or visitors, must be vaccinated. In other words, you must have a proof of a vaccination card or some e-card showing that you're vaccinated.
Mhm.
All work per all work per sorry, all work permit holders must be vaccinated. In other words, if you want to work in Cayman, Turks and Caicos, you have to go get vaccinated. They also have a curfew from 1 a.m. until 5 a.m. In the Virgin Islands, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Shana, this is roughly about 45% immunized. Non-immunized persons must quarantine for 7 days, and there's a curfew from 11 p.m. until 5 a.m. And in lovely island of Bermuda, we are at 65% immunization. Anyone who's a traveler, whether they're locals or foreigners, if you're not immunized, you have to quarantine for 14 days. And similar to Turks and Caicos, in order to eat inside of a restaurant or have an event inside, you have to show proof of vaccination or a negative test, which has caused some degree of consternation for folks in Bermuda, but we have to do what we have to do. There's no curfew. Unfortunately, we've seen a spike in Delta over the last few weeks. Matter of fact, one lady passed away last night or this week. I knew her very well, and it's unfortunate. So these are the things that we have to do in order to keep our small island nations safe. I mean, no one likes to hear curfew. You tell an adult curfew, they look at you like I'm not a teenager. No one wants to hear you got to get vaccinated, and no one wants to hear, oh, if you don't have a vaccine, you can't come into the island. But the alternative is what we see going on in Jamaica right now, where basically it's out of control. People had very low vaccination rate, less than 10%. And the result is now that the hospitals are full and people are literally now lining up to get vaccinated. I mean, literally long lines to get vaccinated because of the danger. So that's my very brief presentation. The bottom line is, as I said, no one wants to hear these mandates because it's as if you're talking to children. However, the reality is the alternative to that is a collapsed health system, and which leads also to economic crisis. So it's a cycle that we can't get out of. And say Maarten is experiencing something similar, if I'm not mistaken. Um, so this is an ongoing story as well. So, and that's my presentation for tonight.
And thank you, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
You are correct in the numbers. I double checked because we just actually got the latest infographic. The percentage in terms of at least one shot plus those fully vaccinated is a little bit higher.
Mm-hmm.
But currently we have a big debate on the ground, though. I don't know if you saw it in the headlines for today about testing of cruise passengers.
Oh, the
So
cruise passengers say they'll pull out.
yeah. So
Let them go.
and it's an
Yeah.
interesting thing because here it is. You have we have to do testing on every other visitor, vaccinated or not. We do the rapid tests for persons that are vaccinated and the PCR for those that are not. And once you receive receive a negative result as a vaccinated person, you only have to quarantine for 24 hours. Those that are unvaccinated have to do the 7 days. So the question now is if every other visitor type has to be tested, how much of a risk are we willing to take now in terms of not testing a cruise ship full of people? Yeah.
Let me give your government some advice. Tell
Okay.
them keep on moving. You all just went through you all just went through the worst thing you could have went
Mm-hmm.
through. Let you have a cruise ship and no one wants to get tested. You'll go right back through that same thing again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I always say it only takes one.
Yeah, and you're talking about the cruise ships that could carry three
Thousands.
thousand to 4,000 people.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I don't know what the final, because I think the deadline to respond might have been today or tomorrow. But in any event, some persons are for saying, well, it's gonna be too much work, and I'm like, what? There's a balance. There has to be a balance on how we manage the risk, because I know it's a risk game at the end of the day. So some persons treat vaccines as if we could take the vaccine and then throw away the mask, but really it's part of everything now that has to be done together as part of I like the cheese analogy, where you're layering you know the protection around your community. So, and this is, we're always learning more information about this virus, so it's something where we constantly, you can't just throw away the old information and just grab onto what's in front of you, but to make sure that it's going. But yeah, this is some challenging times ahead. I don't know what's happening in St. Martin now in terms of cruise. You guys started having cruise ships yet, Xavier?
No, not as yet. We had no, I stand corrected. We started with the home porting. So there
Uh-huh.
was one home porting cruise a few weeks back, and the next one is due anytime now, I believe. So
Okay.
slowly, but not the regular. I don't know what the testing regime is exactly, but we do have one or two more home porting
Okay.
sailings for this year. Yeah.
And I know St. Thomas is supposed to start getting their first set of cruise ships from Monday. So I don't think they're requiring them to test before, but they're definitely requiring them to be vaccinated to
Hmm.
be able to get off.
St. Thomas, whose hospitals are now full of COVID patients. St.
Wow.
Thomas, whose nurses are.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
It, it's
I don't know.
some difficult decisions, buddy. Some difficult decisions.
I
'Cause-
look at it as that we're at war with this virus, and during wartime, normal regulations and normal movement and normal freedoms are compromised. And we're still having the debate here about whether or not teachers should be mandated to be vaccinated, nurses should be mandated to be vaccinated.
Mhm.
And I'm a big proponent of medical freedom. I'm a big believer in it. However, to me, it's like you said, Shaina, it's about the layers of protection. I myself, as an entertainer, when tourism closed down here, I had to make massive shifts in my livelihood. I'm having to diversify now so I can rebound from this in the last 2 years, because a 20-year career doesn't just get rebuilt,
Yeah.
overnight, so to speak. And my thought is that, well, if people have to make adjustments to their livelihoods because it's that important to them to not get vaccinated, then make the adjustments to your livelihood. I've had to do it. Everyone in tourism here has had to do it, and we don't win this. We don't win this battle in any real meaningful way without trying to give sacrifices so that we can avoid giving the ultimate sacrifice. Cayman is existing in a huge bubble,
Hmm.
and on one side of the coin, I feel like we have to bust the bubble and be ready to adapt, but we can't bust it unsafely. And so we're talking about allowing unvaccinated travelers back here to quarantine. We're still up in hands about a lot of these discussions, and I feel like a hard line really needs to be taken on this thing and looking at this as wartime endeavors.
Yeah.
There is no silver bullet. There is no single
No.
solution. There is a series of 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 mitigating layers that we can implement, and as many of those that can get implemented is, to me, is what is most important.
Yeah.
um,
Because it's something for me now, guys, where it's kind of like the long game. We have to really start. We talk about having to live with COVID, because COVID is a coronavirus, which means it's like the flu. It is going to become seasonal. It's a pandemic now in terms of the amount of the world that's been impacted. And from that global view, I'm very concerned because of the vaccine inequity that is still happening on a very large scale. So it's almost as if we do all this stuff here for ourselves, and this thing just continues to proliferate because the bigger countries aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing in terms of the access to it, being something that is more spread out, that again it starts to mitigate the proliferation across the globe, and it becomes pandemic, and then eventually, it decreases. It's not going to go away completely, but what's the long game going to look at going into next year? Because economically we really can't sustain some of this stuff.
Not
Trying,
absolutely.
and that for me is kind of like that breaking point is going to come sooner rather than later,
I think
because
we're actually entering it.
we're already there. Yeah. And the challenge I see, Chris, too, is the fact that this whole talk about boosters, I mean, vaccine hesitancy was one thing. Now that you tell the people, well, it doesn't last as long as we would like it to last, and you have to get another booster shot. It's gonna set things back, because it means now you have to fight to get these people to go get a second shot. Well, no, the third shot, and move it forward. And I'm like, I don't know where the UN or the World Health Organization is on this, but they gotta get it under control, because it's basically the vaccine companies now that are doing this in terms of who they're making the vaccines available to. And it's, they're profiting big time. So, that's one of my concerns now around what's happening, with this situation, and how are we going to move into next year? What else can be done?
And as far as long-term plans and having an actual pandemic response
Mm-hmm.
in each of our unique countries and in the region, and understanding, because it's really not just COVID. There's
Yeah.
other pandemics, there's other things, there's other, and other disastrous situations on the horizon. So it's again, it's like we have to have plans, plural, of how to maintain some kind of resilience, of how to keep our people safe, of what is best practice in these scenarios.
Yeah.
And so it's really important that we don't look at this as an isolated scenario, and
Mm-hmm.
that we deal with this and then we shove it behind us, but really make this inform us for, hey,
For
how do we
future.
have multi-layered approaches, because it's gonna happen again.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. All right, guys,
All right.
weigh in, and then we could start to wrap up.
Well, I would say thank you to Mr. Blackman for giving his he claims not professional advice, but I know it's professional. Um, Thank you to Eden for giving your presentation on preservation of the wetlands, because it's not just Cayman Islands, and other islands is happening as well. You're just Cayman Islands has a group of people that are prepared to fight for literally fight for the earth, and all of us need to do that to some extent. Um, we um, we as people, we get addicted to making money. We get addicted to development. So it is what it is. We have to stand up for Mother Earth at some point in time, because, as Shana said, there's this thing called climate change that's happening.
Yeah.
So that's it from me, and I'll allow everybody else to do their wrap up.
Okay.
All right, go ahead. We'll let our guests go first.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, it was a pleasure. It was nice meeting you all in this setting. It was, I think, way too short, but that's just what it is. You never have enough time to delve into these issues the way you want to. But I hope that at least I have planted a little seed and given enough information for the other territories to at least start looking up information and looking into their status and what they can do to make structural changes. And that again, no matter what you respond to, whether it's a pandemic, climate change, whatever you need to respond to, you need to do that as an a territory that has a full measure of self-government. If you leave others make decisions for you that might have competing interests, especially a metropolitan state, it's not going to work. So thanks again for the time, and you know where to reach me if you need any additional information.
Yeah, we'll
It's a pleasure.
definitely want you to come back and update us on when you guys are fully decolonized.
I don't know if I will see
And
that.
even before that, you don't think you'll see that in your lifetime, really?
I'm not sure. I'm an optimist by nature. But
Okay.
yeah, so I think there have been a lot of developments the last 3-4 years.
Mm-hmm.
that have made me take a more positive look at issues. So
Okay.
yeah, I'll end on that positive note.
Okay.
But
Good. Good.
anytime,
We shall
I'll
be
be more than
hopeful.
happy to come back.
All right. Great. All right, Chris. Not Chris. Eden.
Thank you so much, Xavier. That I learned a lot from it, and please come back because that is an ongoing conversation for sure. It's so much about our history, so much about where we are now, and so much about our future wrapped up in that discussion about colonization, and as it really speaks our ability to make decisions as a region in regards to our stake in our own resources, our stake in our region and controlling and managing what is going on here, and then as well as dealing with climate change. Like my thing with climate change is that it is one issue that encompasses every other issue. And throughout all these things, we have to be unified in addressing them. So development is not just about the environment. It really is about the economy, and it really is about our communities as well, because this is all affecting us on so many levels. And this is one climate change as a specifically is one thing that the entire world is going to be experiencing together. We're experiencing it together. So we all need to really be ready to share that knowledge, how we get through this, how we keep people buoyant, how we keep our health intact, how we keep our communities intact, and how we respond to this crisis the same way as how we had to respond to the pandemic, and how we've had to respond to so many things over our history. So I'm very thankful for us, putting this together and creating this forum for regional talk and regional unity among Caribbean people. So I just thank you so much. Infinite thanks.
All right.
Thank you. And thank you for your presentation, Eden. It was very insightful for me. Thanks.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
You're very welcome.
All right, guys. So we will be back here on the 15th, I believe it is, Chris. God spare life. And you're on mute. So again, we welcome our viewers that would have been on Bermuda's channel 82. And again, we'll be continuing to forge different partnerships with other media houses across the region. And if you guys have any suggestions for topics, feel free to go on our Facebook page, like it. Whenever we have a broadcast schedule, it'll pop up. So it'll keep you guys reminded and you can tune in. You have topics you'd like to hear us discuss. We're going to continue to search out for other guests in the different overseas territories. Hopefully we'll have TCI Montserrat popping up on the screen soon to join us, as well as Anguilla. So we're doing our homework. But again, if you guys have any guest ideas, feel free again to share them with us on our Facebook page or contact either of myself or co-host so that we can keep this conversation going. In my show locally, I say changing conversation for a better Virgin Islands. So I like to extend it to that this is a change in conversations for a better region that we are all residents of. So it's key that we have these conversations because that's where it starts. Right, Chris? That's where it starts, the conversation.
Most definitely. They started the conversation in Europe for 400 years and said, "Hey, what do you think about going down to those islands?" Yeah, I think we could go down there. Yeah. I just want to give a shout out to my cousin Sheila in St. Kitts. Also, my neighbor, Maureen Clemador, the Douglas clan, Renee Simons, and the others in Bermuda that are starting to tune in. They're looking forward to this. All of those in Cayman Islands that tuned in, those in St. Maarten, those in the Virgin Islands. And just thank you. It means a lot. A show is not a show without an audience.
Yes, exactly.
And excellent host. Thank you.
Yes, an excellent hosting. Definitely.
All right.
Thank you.
Please excuse the haggard look. I've been on 10 different planes in the last week.
That might be a future topic, traveling in the Caribbean.
Soldier through the jet lag.
Yeah, so excuse if I look like a raccoon tonight. Thank you.
You were
could
very
end it.
coherent.
Yes.
Yes. All right.
So,
Definitely.
Thank you.
all right,
All
guys.
right, guys.
So
Love
we
you all.
bid everyone good night. God bless.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much. I
Be
love
good.
Alana. Keep
All
rascaling.
right. Take care.